Imagine you're a Viking family in the dead of winter, and the only reason you're not freezing to death tonight is that you're sleeping in the same room as your goats.
Not near them, with them. One room, one fire, humans and livestock packed together. Because body heat was survival technology, and nobody had the luxury of privacy over staying alive. In deep winter, when outside temperatures could sit well below freezing for weeks without a break, the animals weren't just food or labor, they were living radiators, and everyone in that house knew it.
Forget the horned helmets and the dragon ships for a minute.
The version of Viking life that actually kept people alive year after year looked nothing like what you've seen on screen. Real survival habits, verified by archaeology, and some of them are stranger than anything you'd expect from a culture famous mostly for ships and battle axes.
They carried fire in a jar made from boiled urine,
A specific type of fungus, boiled for days in it, pulling out sodium nitrate, and the result didn't burst into flame. It smoldered, holding a slow-burning ember for hours, sometimes longer, depending on how the fungus was prepared. A Viking crew could carry fire across a long journey without starting one from scratch every time they made camp, without flint, without dry kindling, without wasted hours in freezing conditions. On a longship crossing open water for days, no dry land, no guaranteed shelter, salt spray soaking everything you own. A single preserved ember meant the difference between warmth on arrival or starting from nothing in the freezing dark. Built entirely out of waste, and it worked.
Some Viking warriors filed intentional grooves straight into their own front teeth. Archaeologists have found skulls with this modification, widespread specifically among elite fighters, not a rare or isolated custom, pure intimidation, a permanent, visible signal that this was a man who had already proven himself in combat, walking around with a weapon built directly into his own face. Some historians think the grooves were even painted with dye, turning a simple grin into a warning label, something an enemy could see clearly before a blade was ever drawn. Others believe each groove marked a specific victory, a kind of body count carved straight into bone. In a warrior culture, an enemy hesitating for half a second could be the entire fight. Back inside the home, that shared living space wasn't just huddling for warmth. Norse families built their entire home structure around it. One large room, humans, livestock, food storage, all in the same space. Because separating them meant losing heat nobody could afford to lose. The smell, the noise, the complete absence of privacy, none of it mattered against staying alive until spring. Wealthier families sometimes managed a second room for the animals, but for most Vikings, this was the only version of survival that worked. Archaeologists excavating longhouse sites across Scandinavia have found the layout again and again. A single, elongated structure with a central hearth, animal stalls at one end, and human sleeping space at the other, separated by nothing more than a wooden partition. Sometimes not even that. Long before anyone turned skiing into a sport, Vikings were using wooden skis as basic transportation across frozen terrain. Archaeologists have found dozens of preserved examples buried in bogs, essential everyday infrastructure, not occasional tools, some dating back well over 1,000 years, carved from single pieces of pine or birch and bound to the foot with leather straps. If you needed to travel, hunt, or trade in the dead of winter, skis were the only realistic way to cross a landscape that would otherwise trap you exactly where you stood, cutting a family off from food, trade, and help until the thaw. Norse mythology even had a god associated with skiing, Ullr, evidence that this wasn't a minor practical footnote. It was significant enough to earn a place in their belief system, alongside war and harvest. The Norse believed in the Draugr, an undead creature that could rise out of its own grave and bring destruction and misfortune back to the living, strong enough to crush a grown man, said to smell of decay and carry the cold of the grave with it. Before burial, they tied the deceased's big toes together, deliberately, making it physically impossible for the body to stand up and walk if it ever tried to return. Some burials went further still, weighing the body down with heavy stones on the chest, or burying it face down, extra insurance against a threat as real to them as a wolf at the door or a storm at sea. And their bodies took a beating regular rest alone couldn't fix. Weeks of rowing, freezing spray, combat. So they built recovery into the routine itself. Intense heat followed immediately by a plunge into freezing water or a roll in the snow. A practice so deeply embedded that their Nordic descendants still preserve it today. Finland alone has roughly 3 million saunas for a population of just 5.5 million people, a ratio that traces directly back to methods the Vikings relied on just to keep functioning between raids, rowing, and the next brutal winter. A fire source built from waste. A permanent mark filed into bone. A home built around shared body heat. A transportation technology centuries ahead of the sport it became. A burial ritual built entirely around fear of what might come back. A recovery method still practiced by millions today without most of them knowing where it came from. Every one of them solved a specific problem the Norse actually faced: cold, conflict, movement, death itself, using whatever they had, however strange it looked from the outside. None of it needed to be elegant. It just needed to work, winter after winter, generation after generation, until the strange became ordinary and the ordinary became how life worked. Survival, for the Vikings, was never one big heroic act. It was 1,000 small, specific, deeply weird decisions, repeated until they held an entire civilization together. Every one of them solved a specific problem the Norse actually faced: cold, conflict, movement, death itself, using whatever they had, however strange it looked from the outside. Survival, for the Vikings, was never one big heroic act. It was 1,000 small, specific, deeply weird decisions made over and over again, until the strange became ordinary and the ordinary became how life worked.